Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to review the cameras of the brand new P40 Pro. This is TK and this is XDA TV, and this intro was filmed on the front-facing 32 megapixel camera of the brand new P40 Pro. Let's check it out. And this is the P40 Pro. Now keep in mind there's three different models. There's the standard P40, the P40 Pro, and the P40 Pro Plus. This one is the P40 Pro, and it features some of the best optics on a smartphone in 2020. First and foremost, we're talking about a 6.58-inch OLED panel that is basically a 90 Hz refresh rate panel. An in-display fingerprint sensor that's capable of obviously unlocking very quickly. You can definitely see it right there. And of course, as far as the actual internals, we have the Kirin 990, 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs of internal storage, and of course expandability with nano memory card, which is a Huawei proprietary card that is both present here on the bottom. So either two SIM cards or a SIM card and an SD card or a memory card from Huawei. Now, as far as the optics that we have here, we have the primary sensor is a 50 megapixel ultra vision, basically with an RYYB, so it's a red, yellow, yellow, blue configuration for better low light performance, a 4-in-1 pixel binning at f1.9 with built-in OIS, a 40 megapixel video ultra wide, well, basically an ultra wide lens at f1.8, a 12 megapixel super sensing telephoto at f3.4, and that's basically that periscope camera that you have facing this way, where the camera is actually facing sideways and then shooting up. Last but not least, we have also a time of flight sensor for depth information. The front-facing sensor actually is a 32 megapixel camera with an f2.2 f-stop, as well as an IR depth sensor for face unlock on the actual device. All of this is powered by Android 10.0 with EMUI 10.1, a 4200 milliamp battery that is quick charged not only via wireless charging up to 27 watts, but also wired with up to 40 watts, capable of charging this device very, very fast. So there's not going to be a question that if you're going to be taking a lot of videos and a lot of pictures, this device's battery should be able to last you for a very long time. Now, the introduction to this video was recorded on the P40 Pro's front-facing sensor at 4K 60 frames per second, and that's some of the new features that we have here. Is not only do we have 4K 60 on the back, but we also have it on the front-facing sensor. So that gives us the ability of actually recording high-quality audio with good dynamic range, not only on the back, but also on the front-facing camera. Let's go ahead and jump into the camera application. We're greeted with the photo mode. We have access obviously to all of the lenses, the wide angle lens, the standard focal length, as well as the telephoto. By default in the photo mode, it opens up to the standard focal length. In video, it jumps into obviously the wide angle lens. That's how it's set up by default, and you can jump between the different lenses. Although if you're in photo, you just keep in mind that you're also able to go all the way up to 50 times X, which essentially is using that periscope telephoto lens to be able to get you as close as possible, and we'll definitely take a look at some of those pictures. We have access to portrait mode, night mode, which is also present on both the front and the back sensor, as well as portrait mode. We have aperture, which also enables us to use a basically software-enabled aperture mode to be able to do that shallow depth of field, of course, focus it on your subject, and of course, just be able to actually change that how blurry the background is. And of course, we have the portrait video mode. We have the ability of going all the way up to 4K 60 frames per second on the back-facing sensor as well as on the front-facing sensor. Of course, a few additional options here to be able to customize them. Now, we do have a pro mode for both images as well as video. And of course, we also have RAW and of course, full 50 megapixel sensor images. So there's actually a couple of options. You can actually shoot in RAW, which enables you to take those images. And I do want to mention to you guys that shooting in RAW, even with the full sensor, your image file is going to be roughly about 100 megabytes. So I've taken a few shots with this, and it is not something easily shareable, so just be aware. But the beauty of RAW is the ability of actually going back in, let's say something like Photoshop, and actually bring in and basically tune the image exactly to the way you want, since it's actually all stored directly in the image file that you have. But again, if you want to be able to turn it on, you press it in here. By default, when you get into Pro mode, they're disabled. And of course, focusing on all the other options, manual focus, ISO, shutter speed, and of course, just all of them, as well as the white balancing. And then same thing here. And you get the same exact experience here when you jump into Pro mode for video. And the resolution here is still 4K at 60 frames per second. Lastly, we have a few additional modes that are obviously very, very nice. And first and foremost, we'll start off by saying is that this also has some of the slowest options as far as slow mode you can get. So here's 256 times slow motion video that you're able to watch on the actual device. As far as demoing this, the best way to see it is obviously to see something that's intended to move at a very fast pace, and of course see how much this device can actually slow it down to a standstill. So we'll start off the video right there, and you'll notice this is at the point where I was dropping a pair of FreeBuds 3. These are also Huawei headphones. I was dropping it in front of the box as I was doing the unboxing. You can see how much it slowed it down. And of course, the flickering on the mouse sitting on the right side. Very, very nice, very clear. I do recommend though, if you are going to be shooting video or actually trying to do slow motion video, to do it in as lit possible of an environment, as it does need a lot of light. And of course, the darker it is, the more grainy it looks. But definitely looks really, really nice. And I did try another one with my son, and I had him basically just do a quick jump in the middle of the air. You can see right there, and it almost froze him entirely in the middle of air. Again, beautiful. And this one looks a lot better than the first one, again, as it has a lot more light. We have natural light that's present outdoors. Of course, you can actually speed it up a little bit, and you can definitely see, again, for slow motion photography, there's no question that this device is going to be amazing. Now we have obviously a few other modes. We have a good panorama mode as well that you're able to take great pictures with. Monochrome to be able to turn on a filter. There is no monochrome lens on this device. AR lenses. Light painting is also very, very fun to do. Something like if you want to be able to share or do some unique experiences in the dark. And as you can see right there in that picture, I was able to do a quick TK at the dark. All I ended up doing basically is turning off the light and of course just drawing TK. It took me a couple of times to realize that I had to spell my name backwards for it to look correctly on the camera. But other than that, actually it looks really nice. And of course we have time-lapse, sticker, document scanning, underwater if you're wanting to take this in the water. And of course dual view, which is a very functional way of using two sensors at the same time. It gives you the ability of using two sensors at the same time on the back, obviously, since we don't have two sensors on the front. Now the left one is the standard focal length, and you're able to basically zoom all the way up to 15 times X zoom. On the right side, it's using the wide angle lens, and you're able, of course, to record video, as I'm showing you guys right now from a walk that we took with the family not that long ago. And last but not least is the high-res functionality, which essentially gives us the ability of using the full 50 megapixel image, this time not using the raw footage. So when you take in an image here, this is 50 megapixel JPEGs compressed. So if you want to use it in raw form, you do need to jump out of that mode, jump into Pro mode, turn on the 50 megapixel, and then turn on the raw. And at this point, it'll save a raw image, of course, at the 50 megapixel resolution. That last mode that I was showing you guys, it's mostly just taking the full sensor image, not a support, now no raw support at that point. The best way to see this essentially is I took a quick picture of the backyard through the window, and you can definitely see a little bit of actual, let's go and jump back. You can see some reflection in here, and this was mostly just a reflection of the light straight onto the actual glass. So the best way to do this is jump into the editor. You'll notice first and foremost we have that option to be able to reduce or remove reflection. Now in this situation it didn't remove it entirely, but it definitely did reduce it quite a bit. You can definitely see right there. And it also did actually a little bit of a processing here. So definitely some nice AI options. We have brighten, diminish, straighten, and of course adjust document and the standard editing tools. But this is not the one that was really, really exciting for me. One of the very few features that I saw in here that was very, very unique is the ability of removing people out of your image, especially when you have, I would say basically passerbys when you're trying to take an image. So this image I was trying to take of my son, obviously this is a staged image with my son, and then of course there were some people that were walking right behind us. I went ahead and hit the edit button. I gave it a second for it to process, and you'll notice we have a new option that's sitting right there. It's called remove passerby. Now look at the picture and make sure you stay focused on it. I'm going to go ahead and run the process on this and see exactly how it does it, and it does it so well it actually looks like it literally took the image out. It does it by taking a short video when you're taking the image, and it enables it to basically stitch in the missing piece or the piece that they're going to be removing the people out for it to recognize it. I do want to say though that for this to actually work correctly, the subject has to obviously be standing still. It doesn't work with a moving subject. So as long as my son was standing in front and you got somebody walking in behind them, it definitely recognizes it and you're able to move it. And when you're done, you're able to just save it and of course share your image. So let's go ahead and start looking at images with the zoom functionality. So this is just a standard image, wide angle lens. I'm zooming in a little bit and keep going forward. We can actually now see the bridge, as when we were looking before we could barely see it. And then of course zooming it even more, and then that's not even the furthest I'm able to go. I'm actually able to get all the way up to the bridge as if I'm actually standing very close to it. And the image, because there's enough lighting, it actually looks pretty good and somewhat reasonably usable. So if you actually have to take a picture of something when you're standing so far away from it, it's still doable and it's still functional, specifically with the periscope camera that we have here. Now for a nice little experiment, I gave my son, my 10-year-old son, the P40 Pro, and I asked him to take a few pictures. So this is a picture obviously of a Dragon Ball character that he's playing with. And I'll swipe over a little bit more. When we did a little bit of editing with the built-in editing app, you could definitely see so much more information. Obviously just the composition itself was very nice. He was able to kind of position everything on his own. Editing it in the built-in editor is just purely just to get it looking a little bit better. And of course, one more here with, again, just looks so much nicer, and he was able to compose the entire image. And the camera itself, was able to take and retain all of that information, of course. And as you can imagine, of course, the cats made it in there, and he was actually even able to take a really nice picture of a small little daisy in the backyard. And last but not least, actually an aloe vera plant that we have here, and he was able to just take a nice little composition. So again, the cameras are absolutely fantastic. There's no question about the fact that you can actually take great images with them. And one of the main things that I really like about the P40 Pro this year is, of course, the ability of taking really good images on the front-facing camera, especially with good dynamic range. As you can see right there, both my son and I were very well exposed, as well as the actual background wasn't overblown, even though it was quite bright that day when we took this image. This is going to be a quick front-facing video sample for audio and video, obviously handheld on the brand new P40 Pro. Now we are recording at 4K 60 frames per second on the front-facing camera, which is something that's new. We've seen 4K 30 before on other devices, but 4K 60 on an Honor or a Huawei device is definitely something very new. Now obviously on the back we're also able to do the exact same thing, 4K 60 on the back-facing sensor, but we don't have any 8K, so that's something to keep in mind. But again, having 4K 60 on both sensors, the front and the back, is definitely very nice. Let's go ahead and switch over to the back-facing sensor and see how the quality of the image as well as the stabilization is right there. Went ahead and switched over to the back-facing sensor. Now the beauty of the back-facing sensor is that we're able to use multiple lenses and still get the 4K 60 frames per second. Like right now I'm using the wide-angle lens, and just as a note, it actually does default to that. There's a little bit of a wind around me, so I'm wondering how that's going to actually play with the actual video here. But again, quick sample of the front-facing, the main sensor on the back at 4K 60 frames per second using the brand new P40 Pro. The P series of devices from Huawei have always been known for their cameras, and the P40 Pro does not disappoint at all. The triple camera setup that we have here, or technically the quadruple camera setup on the back, definitely work very, very nicely. The time of flight sensor obviously is not going to be taking any pictures, but it's used for depth information. And as I'm showing you guys images right now, obviously you can set the aperture, take a regular image, and then change the aperture later on. The telescopic camera that we have here obviously can get very close to the subject, up to a certain uncomfortable feeling depending on how you want to look at it. But at the end of the day, I feel like the cameras on this device look and will perform great in any hand, in mine or even in my 10-year-old son. I want to say first and foremost, thank you to Huawei for sponsoring this video and of course providing us the sample to be able to check out this device and share with you guys our opinions. But of course, let me know in the comments below, what do you guys like the most about the P40 Pro's cameras? Is it the front-facing sensors, the back-facing sensors, the ability of zooming in, or the ability of actually having some just amazing, basically night shot as well, as I'm showing you guys right there. The images that we're looking at here in the backyard were absolutely dim. If I wasn't actually using this camera, I would not have been able to see the detail in the background, or even actually looking at the details of those action figures that I have sitting here. They're both nicely lit in the camera and as far as the way you take the image, but in reality, when you're standing in front of it, you can barely see what's going on there. I think the cameras on this device are absolutely fantastic and they keep getting better. That AI, basically passerby removal, just seriously made me look twice. The way it did it and stitched the image, and it looks so much better, will make it so that you never have any problems taking pictures anywhere. The only thing I recommend though is you do need to turn off the AI mode off and then turn on motion image, and of course have your subject centered and not moving, and everything will look perfectly there in that sense. So like and subscribe as usual. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below of the brand new P40 Pro and the camera array that we have here on the front as well as on the back. And I will see you guys in the next video. And make sure you check out my channel.